Good morning. You're listening to the Blaine's World show, heard each Wednesday here on WPVM 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina. You can also listen online at WPVM.org and watch on WPVM's Facebook page. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here in my Zoom studio in lovely downtown Fairview, North Carolina. And each week we focus on the Asheville theater scene, as well as positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce my first guest, and he is Darko Butorac. Am I close with it?
Lovely.
Getting it. Okay. And welcome aboard, Darko. You can say hello to all your fans and friends on Facebook. So
hello.
You can give them a wave. Okay.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you. Darko is the music director of the Ashevillel Symphony, and he's music director and conductor since 2018. He has guest conducted numerous orchestras across the United States and Canada, as well as in Europe, Asia, and South America. And the question, Darko, I always ask a guest for the first time is that you grew up where?
Oh, that's a great question.
Well,
I was born in Belgrade, Serbia, then Yugoslavia.
Okay.
But, as a kid, I moved to the United States. And I would say, to answer your question, Seattle mostly.
Okay. And the question I asked, when you were a kid growing up in Seattle, did you always know you wanted to be an orchestra conductor?
No, I found out at the age of 17 when I first had the chance.
That was 17. Before that, what had you wanted to be?
Probably going down the road of science background. I loved and I still love math and physics, but I've always. My approach to education was nothing is boring, everything is just wonderful to absorb. Same thing was with music. And I was deeply involved in my school's orchestra program and played cello. And then, one day I had an opportunity to stand up and conduct, and it felt this is the thing you have to do in your life. This feels right.
Now that was you were 17 when that happened?
I was 17 years old, yeah.
What was the occasion?
It was just a chance in my high school. There were senior projects, and not to go too deeply into the story, mine was an opportunity to conduct the orchestra, and it was Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony, the first movement, and it went beautifully well, and I wanted to pursue it after that.
I have a great idea, Darko, for a fundraiser for the symphony, and I've told this to other people, but I'll share it with you. Is that wouldn't it be cool if everybody could do their first performance over again and have it on tape? Like when you were 17, did they videotape it?
I think there was a VHS somewhere out there. It was a while back.
But wouldn't that be cool if we did it now in the year 2021 and everybody does their first thing, or especially the musicians, the performers, everybody plays, the very first thing they ever did as a 5-year-old or even as a kid. So you play the cello. When did you start playing the cello?
About the age of 10.
Okay. Do you remember your first performance?
Oh gosh.
To
be honest, no, I don't remember what's the first piece I played. I really don't.
Think about that. Wouldn't that be fun though if you just revisited it and give everybody a chance to see the evolution of Darko? So you started then composing, started becoming a conductor at age 17. Did you then go on to study it in school?
Yes, that was kind of the key moment, because I said, if you're going to be a conductor and this is really what you want to do, you have to perform as an instrumentalist. And so I pursued a degree in cello performance at the University of Toronto, and then conducting in graduate school at Indiana University in Bloomington. And
question in terms of conducting, and people see it, and I'll tell you a funny story where it's not quite as easy as everybody thinks it is. Can anybody become a conductor?
Yes and no. It depends. Can anybody conduct it? Yes. I mean, I'm sure I can take anybody off the street and teach them basic motions, and they could get up in front of the orchestra and it will be somewhat successful. The question is, of course, the degrees, right? As in any profession, is the further up we go in terms of our art, the harder and more demanding it is. And that's where, the selection begins. But to move the hands is easy. That's really a simple task. What conducting is an exercise both in musical imagination, so taking the score that you have and taking your experience as a human being, bringing that to the music and building an image of what these black dots on paper actually sound like in creating sound. At that point, you approach an orchestra that collectively has their own sound and collectively has probably played this piece more times than you have ever heard it. And the two opposing forces meet. And it is in that meeting that the performance is crafted. It's the idea that the conductor brings versus what the orchestra is offering, and how the conductor is able to use what the orchestra is offering and yet be informed by their own subjective idea. That meeting can result in really something incredible, because both ideas can actually transcend each other. One can feed in an upward loop, both the orchestra, and the orchestra can also inspire you if you have open ears and you say, hey, that's a great idea. I should actually modify my idea that I had in order to bring that in. And ultimately, then it's really a game of psychology with your players, both in terms of how you use your hands, but also how you speak, how you appear, and what you choose to focus on. Because any bar of music has numerous things you could work on. There's the obvious things like pitch or length of notes. You could talk about articulation, dynamics, balance, color, and you stretch that across thousands of notes in a piece of music. There's plenty to talk about. So the psychology comes in choosing what you choose to talk about in front of that particular group. That's where the art of conducting lies.
Well, I guess also it lies in who you get for the symphony as well, in terms of the musicians you have perform for you.
Absolutely. The quality of musicians is going to be super important. And then the final layer is, actually, this is very, I think, moving to talk about today and post, is it? No, it's not quite post, but in the wake of the pandemic, let's put it that way, is the importance of the audience in the concert. We've had, all musicians worldwide had plenty of opportunity to perform to a wall this year, and it is not the same. It is absolutely not the same. The audience is an integral part. If anything I've learned this year, the audience is an absolutely integral part of the experience. And why also live music is much more important. I mean, I don't need to teach this to people in Asheville. We know we do more live music than anywhere else in the country. But live element is crucial in the experience of experiencing music and getting the most out of it. And sorry.
No, it'd be fascinating to see this. I'm curious if you ever did. Have you ever seen the same orchestra led by two different people?
Sure.
And the same music, almost like the same. I've never seen this, but it'd be fascinating to see it done on the same night. Like composer A does the first half and composer B does the second half. You would see a difference?
Absolutely. So one of the ways the conundrum of conductors is when you're not good, when you're starting out, no orchestra wants to work with you because you're not good. Right. But you can't get better unless you work with an orchestra. So a frequent method of how conductors get better, they're conducting master classes where an orchestra will bring a master teacher and multiple conductors go and conduct different repertoire. Well, frequently it will be 4 conductors will do the same movement in a row. Absolutely different, completely different. It's just like music making. Your personality shines through. You cannot hide yourself. Like, it is there, all, warts and everything. And it's fascinating.
How about, I just read the book by Alex Trebek, the guy with Jeopardy.
Oh,
Sure. He talked about, he was a guest conductor at an orchestra, and they let him, he didn't have the baton though, to conduct, is that a requirement? You need the baton, or there it is?
I got plenty here. Let's do a little show and tell for the audience.
Okay. How important is it?
How important is it? The idea of the baton in a textbook way is that it's an extension of the arm. It makes the arm longer and more clearly visible. And ideally, the tip of the baton is where the beat takes place. So it's a way to focus attention. That's the idea. In practice, the better the orchestra is, the less important that becomes. It is, we are dealing with large distances on stage, so it does allow for focal point to be easily drawn by the eye. I doubt I would say very few professional musicians at the highest level are actually paying attention where exactly the tip of the baton is. I think far more important is that it magnifies the gesture, and the gesture actually is more, this is a key thing that I think for the layperson, we look at the conductor and we say, well, they're leading the orchestra, they're showing the orchestra where to play. No. Yes, but no. In this case, the baton is actually part of conveying character of the music and where the music is going. So it's direction as opposed to actual points of meeting together so much. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If I give you 4 clicks, you can kind of anticipate where the 5th click will be. That's what the conductor does. It's not telling you, okay, let's all make sure we play exactly here together and exactly, it doesn't work like that. There's an element of time and delay from the gesture to the sound being produced. So if you're trying to be with the orchestra, you're actually late.
Well, let me ask you a recommendation. If people are watching the Asheville Symphony Orchestra, what should they be looking at? Do they look at you? Do they look at the individual musicians? Is there a suggestion?
Yeah, this is another great thing about live music. I think you can look at, it's your own party, whatever you're interested in. You can look at, you can seek out who's playing the melody. And oftentimes that's easy in the strings because the motion of the arms will tell you exactly who is playing the tune, right? You can follow the sound and the eye matches. Sometimes it's fun to look what other players are doing because the ones who are not playing the melody might focus your ear on a part in the music that is not dominant. And you're like, oh, that's cool. It's like a second melody which is hidden under the first melody. That's one way we can look at the orchestra. It can be sport. What are the players who are not playing doing? I like doing that sometimes. How are they spending their time waiting? What are they doing? Are they looking at the audience? Are they looking at players on the stage? Are they counting rests and being, good students, so to speak? And of course, there is the conductor, and depending who's conducting, it can be entertaining or it can be just, there or anything in between. It's kind of, there's a lot of options.
Darko, let's go from here now to where you got to Asheville. You were telling me, I know off the air, you came to Asheville not too long ago. What brought you to Asheville?
Well, in my business, we don't really have a chance to choose where we're going to work. It's really a lottery of taking auditions and see where you end up. And so the Asheville Symphony announced their opening, I believe it was in late 2016. Yes, late 2016. And, I applied for the job. I remember doing an interview. I was abroad in Japan and I was doing my phone interview at 11 p.m. there while the committee was in Asheville in the morning. I came out, I conducted the concert, it went really well, and I won the position. I'm very proud of it. There were over 400 applicants who applied for the position. Asheville is, of course, a wonderful town and such an inspiring place to make music. So for me, this was like winning the lottery. It was such a joy to be able to come and not every orchestra you meet clicks immediately. It's not just that the conductor has to be good, but also the orchestra has to be a good fit for you to get your best out. And the concert we did back in 2017, November, I think it was my first concert, my audition concert, it was just such a wonderful time. It just felt, yes, this feels right. And so here I am.
Well, glad you are, because otherwise I'd be talking to myself, so it's nice to have you. But talk further than, so you got to Asheville and talk a little bit about the Asheville Symphony Orchestra. So it's ordinarily, we'll talk about pre-COVID, then we'll talk about during COVID. Sure. But ordinarily the season is how long and how long do you practice and play for?
Well, typically we produce a concert approximately once a month, starting from the fall until the spring, basically in, let's say, September or October until May or June. There'll usually be about 8 concerts in that period. We do a New Year's Eve show every year, which is a fun way to celebrate the holiday. And then other projects as they come up. So we've done some recordings. We did a recording a couple of years ago that made #1 on Billboard with Boyz II Men and Steep Canyon Rangers. It was a collaboration with the Ashevillel Symphony, and the single made it to #1 on Billboard. That was such a huge honor for us, and really kind of stepping out of our comfort zone and working with completely different styles, and just a wonderful thing. The single is called Be Still Moses. You can look that up on YouTube. I think it's just a wonderful tune.
How long a rehearsal process is it before a concert?
So a concert takes place usually on Saturday night, and we will rehearse 4 times, 2.5 hours each, so 9 hours of rehearsal after you account for breaks. And so it's not a lot of time. Musicians arrive Wednesday afternoon, and by Saturday night, we put together the concert.
And so also prior to the rehearsal, so they all have the music beforehand and they're practicing?
We have a phenomenal librarian. He is very organized and sends all the parts out weeks in advance. So yeah, the parts are prepared. Everything is ready to go. People are expected to prepare their parts and come prepared. You do not learn the music at rehearsal. There's no time.
You're raising a really good point, though. It's probably a joke I've seen on the internet or a meme that, people talk, why should musicians get paid? They all have, it's a 2-hour concert, 3-hour concert, and they don't realize that every lesson they had, every rehearsal they had, so much it goes into it that people just aren't aware of. They don't think that.
It's not just the time to prepare the concert.
Right.
It's the time to have the skills to be able to prepare the concert, which is a lifetime's work.
Yeah.
Most of the musicians on stage of the Asheville Symphony started playing when they were kids. The great majority went to fine conservatories around the country and abroad and have incredible control over the instruments. This is not something which is, you just pick up and do it. I mean, anybody who's a musician knows how hard it is. One of the reasons I love music in this day and age is that it's one of the last things where we cannot hack it. You cannot write a computer program and learn how to play an instrument. You actually have to sit down at your instrument, spend the hours, invest the time, struggle, and overcome the difficulties of the instrument in order to master it.
Well, it's a line that, was it Malcolm Gladwell? Gladwell, the 10,000 hours,
10,000 hours, yeah.
But, it's funny, we were talking off there about a mutual friend, Franklin Keel, and he also made the other point too. He was telling me, I said, do you practice? And yeah, he still practices every single day of his life, and not an insignificant amount. I thought once you have it mastered, you're still practicing every day?
I think that's the most beautiful thing about being a musician is that really, it's a job that you never say, I mastered it. Even the masters continue to master it further. There's no end point of being a musician unless we say so ourselves. So it's the book without end. I'm thrilled to be in a profession that literally I can be the best musician that I am the moment before I die.
Well, you were saying
that's a great privilege.
Yeah, it's a great quote. You were saying also that you started out as a cello player. Do you still play the cello?
Not so much. I travel so much. In the prior to COVID, I don't think I was spending more than 2 or 3 weeks in any one spot on the earth at a time. And the cello does not travel that well. So sadly, no. I've dropped my chops a little bit. But
well, talk about then even a composer. Does a composer have to practice?
You mean conductor?
Conductor, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah, and the way I practice is I read music. So, I will have, let me see if I don't have a score handy here.
Right.
So, I'll take this on my travels. This is a piece we worked on this spring with the Asheville Symphony. This is all I need. This fits in any bag. It comes with me wherever I am. And yeah, there's no end point where you say, I know this. There's always more to find out. It's like a endless puzzle.
The only thing, I guess, it wouldn't be good to be sitting next to you on a plane or train, though, because you're reading it and then you're conducting and hanging.
No. But here's the thing: I don't move my hands when I study. You don't know. In fact, you don't. This is a key thing, at least in my opinion, is one doesn't have to. There's moments where you have to coordinate physicality, and actually like choreograph a certain passage when it's very, very complicated. But most of the time, it's getting the mental image of what the piece is. And if that is strong, it doesn't matter how you move your arms. That will emanate from you. It will radiate from you, and the players will understand it. It just works. So it's about having ideas about how peace goes, what it means, what did the composer want to say, and come from that perspective.
Darko, talk a little bit about what happened during COVID now. As we're talking, we're kind of we're moving out of it, hopefully, and people are starting to get out and come out. But how did you guys survive during COVID?
I joke that COVID took away three things that I love most: music, travel, and basketball. Luckily, all three are coming back slowly. And in fact, the Ashevillel Symphony is planning a full season for next fall. In fact, we've decided to open the season with an outdoor concert that's going to be free to the public. It'll take place on Saturday, 19th of September, and really not a concert just of classical music, but of all music, to celebrate music, to celebrate the gift it brings to us. And so, nice. When a year ago, we couldn't do anything. I mean, we did, the only thing musically we did after the shutdown was a kind of a digitally put together version of the Ashokan Farewell, as a little testament to Asheville. But we stayed dormant practically until this spring. And what we settled on is a series of concerts that we recorded at Diana Wortham Theater, a very generous venue that allowed us to use the space for just cost of labor. And we recorded 4 concerts. Now, one of the fundamental discoveries in this process was, if we put a concert, first of all, we cannot put a normal concert because at the distance, a normal symphony orchestra doesn't work. So we have to reduce forces, both because of budgetary pressures and because we have to be 6 feet apart. So our orchestra goes from being like 60, 70 people to all of a sudden 15 to 20. Well, there's not really repertoire. What do you do with 15 to 20 musicians? There's few pieces. And I don't think anybody wants to see an overture, concerto, and a symphony like you would when you go to a concert hall. It's just like you're looking at this on a screen. It's not, we can go see recordings of Berlin Philharmonic on YouTube. We can,
right.
We already have that. So how do you innovate? How do you find it? And what we decided on is to instead focus on shorter pieces, some of which were arranged specifically for the ensembles we had, and to use video to tell the story of the music. So we worked with Daniel Judson, who's a fantastic videographer, and we produced 4 concerts. They were released, 3 of them were already released to our subscribers, and we look to release more to the general public as the summer approaches, kind of as a gift to the community. But ultimately, it was a test of, necessity is kind of the mother of creativity, this kind of philosophy. And I'm very proud of what we achieved because it allowed us to really bring a broad number of pieces. If pieces are 4 minutes long, you can do 10, 15 pieces in a concert. And then the narrative you build is actually very compelling in some cases.
Well, Darko, let me ask you in the remaining time, I think you have a sample of this, or do you have something you can show me?
I do, yeah. I have one recording. I'll preface it. This is kind of the best element of creativity we did in the spring so far. I talked to our guest artist, a cellist. His name is Amit Piled. And we talked and I said, we want to bring classical pieces, but we also want to go beyond that. Are there things you're passionate about you'd want to do? And he suggested several things, some movie scores. But one of the things he suggested, he sent me a recording of an African-American spiritual with Hammond organ. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. And he said, let's arrange this for cello and strings. And I have a great friend, his name is Asaf Gleisner, in Savannah, and he arranged the piece for us. We did a little bit of editing, and so I wanted to share kind of what that looks like. Okay. So this is Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child with the Asheville Symphony.
Let's go for it.
All right, and we hope the technology works.
we lost the picture, but that's okay.
I think it's goes on for a couple minutes, but I know we have a limited time, so just wanted to give a picture of that and show what we've been working on.
That must have been so exciting for you and your performers to actually be performing again.
It was so moving. That first time when we gathered, it's like we couldn't believe it. Oh my God, we're actually making music together again. It was just beautiful.
I saw it during the during the pandemic. Disney was running Hamilton, and I paid just to see Hamilton. It's the first time I saw a show in 9 months. I was in tears, but I'm almost just watching that. I'm almost in tears. And the only thing I miss, seriously, is you realize too how the face is important, because I'm watching that, I'm listening to it, I'm saying, wow, but I would have loved to have seen the faces of the performers, but I didn't realize that's so important.
Well, as a conductor, the face is such an important part of showing expression you want to communicate to your players. I understand completely, but fingers crossed, I think we're moving in the right direction. I hope by the fall, if vaccination continues the way it is, I'm very hopeful we can be in a place where we can perform without masks, certainly outside.
Very exciting too, just since you mentioned it, the outside performance, do you know where that's going to be yet? Or can you share it?
Smack in the middle of town, in front of in Pack Square.
Okay.
Yeah, so the 19th of September, Sunday, is the date, and I'm so excited. I've been wanting to do a public performance outside with the orchestra for so long, and I think it will just be a wonderful evening. I urge our listeners to put the date in the calendar, because it will be. It's so special to be in a concert to begin with, but to bring everybody together again for the first time. The energy on stage is going to be incredible, and I'm sure in the public as well.
And I want to thank you and the Ashevillel Orchestra, the Ashevillel Symphony, for making that available, because that's some gift to give to the community to see this. And I think it's going to be mobbed. If folks want to get more information about some of the good work you folks do, best bet is to do what? AshevilleSymphony.org.
All the information is on our website. That's the best place to visit us.
Okay, and you have a mailing list also, or they can get on, or email list? Probably an email.
Yes, through the website you can sign up and be involved. But if you know the Asheville Symphony, tell your friends about it, and if you don't, come meet us, and we'd love to bring you into the family. Okay.
Well, anyway, thank you very much for being my guest this first half hour on the show, and hopefully we'll see you again at the outdoor concert, definitely, and we'll see you at indoor too, hopefully. And,
thank you so much, Blaine.
Okay, be well, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the near future. Thanks again. Okay, now if I can make Darko disappear, we'll see if I can get my other guest. Thanks again, Darko. I'm going to put you in the waiting room, and Darko is there. I'm going to get my other guest, and as I get him, I think Sam's with us. And Sam, I think, is going to come right on board. But as Sam's coming on board, hey, Sam, but one second. I'm just going to make a general announcement. I'd like to mention to our listeners that you're listening to WPVM, and WPVM is, let's see where that is. The mission is to foster community through programming that cultivates dialogue to inform and entertain. The station provides the medium for artists, businesses, community leaders, and nonprofits to share their voice on live radio. Listeners are invited to help support WPVM's efforts by making a tax-deductible contribution. They can do so by going to the website, WPVMFM.org, and looking at the donate option on the upper right-hand side. My pleasure now is to introduce my next guest, and he is Sam Tate. But Sam, you go by another name? What's the other name?
Brother Sam Tate's my radio name.
We're Brother Sam Tate?
Yes.
Brother Sam Tate. And I should mention that Sam is the owner, host, producer of Gospel Gems, which we'll talk about in a second. And feel free to wave to all your fans and friends in Facebook world, Sam. So you can wave to everybody who's watching.
Hi, hello, everyone.
And this is really exciting, Sam, to have you on board, because I understand this is the first time you've been on Facebook Live like this. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, that's right. We're excited.
Okay, and I should mention that Sam was been in broadcasting since 1964. You started what, at the age of 3? Was that it?
Almost. That's when I first got excited about microphones, Blaine.
Okay. Well, and Sam, I should just mention, Sam, maybe just move just a little bit back further. But Sam was a rock and roll DJ for 28 years. Now the host producer of Gospel Gems, America's very first nationally, internationally syndicated oldie goldie Black gospel radio show. It's heard on approximately 75 radio stations plus the World Wide Web. And the question, Sam, I always ask a guest for the first time is, you grew up where?
I actually grew up in Morganton, North Carolina, which is the western part of North Carolina. It's the home of Watergate Senator Sam Ervin, the one who helped to put President Nixon away, impeachment. But anyway, I was born in New York, in Manhattan. My dad was a merchant mariner. He worked on a civilian ship. But at the age of 3, he moved my mom and my 2 younger brothers and me to the farm in Morganton, North Carolina.
And when did you know you wanted to become a DJ?
About the age, as long as I can remember, Sam Tate, 3.5 or 4 years old, Blaine, I was always fascinated with microphones, never been interested in television. I tell people I have a good face for radio, but
join the crowd.
Yeah. All of my life, I have been fascinated with microphones. I had it so bad that on the farm, I'd walk around the farm casting in a stick or a cob. And if someone walked up on me, I'd start to singing because you didn't look as stupid, singing as you did talking to yourself,
What was your first DJ gig?
It was in Greensboro. After I went off to college, I went off to A&T State University, and ironically, the local soul station was only about a mile from campus, and I walked in between classes on the weekend and all to the radio station. And to answer your question, I started out taking all of the shifts that nobody wanted. Who will sign the radio station on Christmas morning? I will. Easter Sunday, And what I did, I worked those, and then vacation time rolled around. I was the morning man, afternoon man, news man, gospel man. But at the end of the summer, the boss realized there's only one person here who can do anybody's job, that little guy who hangs around the radio station all the time. Somebody got fired, and he said, get Sam ready. So that's how I got started.
By the way, you're giving great advice to listeners. And I know one of the things you enjoy doing is working with youngsters and other folks to help inspire them. And that's great advice you just gave people, that if you want to get ahead in some field, just volunteer to do everything.
That's how, when all else fails, volunteer. Yeah.
And you certainly did. So what was your first full-time gig? Do you remember?
Yes, at WEAL in Greensboro, North Carolina. I was a little rock and roll disc jockey for about 28 years, but that was where I got started, actually in Greensboro. I've worked just about every format that you can think of, from classical, rhythm and blues, gospel, top 40, adult, contemporary, and even worked, I was in the Army in Albuquerque, New Mexico, worked at KPAR, a top 40 station out there. But I've been around, in this business, you sort of move around.
Well, let me ask you, do you have a favorite format?
Well, of course, yes, black gospel. That's what I like now. But, I came along in the mid 60s, the Motown sound, and knew many of the artists personally. I used to drive the legendary Otis Redding around, sitting on the dock of the bay. James Brown knew I liked to fly. He'd let me go get on his Learjet. Michael Jackson, Jerry Butler, Joe Simon, and the list goes on. But I just enjoyed, in the larger markets, anytime an artist would come to town, the first place they wanted to come to is the radio station, as you know, and for the interviews and all. And then we would also MC the shows at the Coliseum. Now I'm backstage in dressing rooms. What an opportunity for a little 19 or 20-year-old college kid, just getting started in the industry.
Did you ever MC any of the shows yourself?
Oh, yes. I have emceed, especially many of the gospel shows myself, but at the Coliseums and all, in most cases, most of the announcers there at the local station, we all would come out on stage and bring somebody on. Excuse me.
I'm sorry, just listening to you, you seem to have like one of the great voices for radio. I'm just listening to you and just mesmerized, just hearing your voice.
Oh, wow. Thank you for the compliment.
Well, no, but let me put you on the spot here. Just give me a brief intro, like of your going on the gospel show or some other show. Talk about how you do it.
Well, a great big hello, everybody. We're right back on the scene with the Gospel Record Machine. My name is Brother Sam Tate, and we're going to be keeping you company for the rest of the hour. So get on that telephone and call and tell a friend. In the meantime, we're on the move. There's music in the air. There goes.
I could be wrong, but I would imagine you've done that a few times.
2 times in my life. You know, like I say, since 1964.
But what's so fun listening to you is that, like, I still sometimes need a script or look at something, but you can just do this off the top of your head?
In most cases, yes, just off the top of my head.
Let's talk a little bit about gospel, though, and how you got into that field. So you started, which is pretty impressive. You had this idea, I guess, to have a gospel show that would go around the country?
Well, it started off, you know, quite frankly, my goal was to syndicate my rhythm and blues show. Sam the Sham. That was my radio name in the secular world. And I guess the good Lord, Blaine wanted me to syndicate, but he wanted me to syndicate his gospel, and he wanted me to do oldie goldie black gospel, which had many of the artists that I played in the secular world, you know, artists such as Aretha Franklin, Sam Cooke, many of them, Joe Simon, all started out in church and then went into the secular world, and some of them came back if they lived long enough, you know. But that's I found a little niche that nobody is filling. We tell people that we're the host of Gospel Gems, America's very first nationally and now internationally syndicated oldie goldie black gospel radio show.
And one of the fun things about the show, which I've heard, you were gracious enough to send me a couple of shows, is that, as you said, that it's not necessarily a black-white thing. It's music for anybody, you know, so that
That's exactly.
I think we should mention that to viewers or listeners. That's just great music.
If you like the Motown sound, you like Gospel Gems.
Well, and you caught me, you know, I knew what you hooked me when I started hearing some Sam Cooke. You know, I said, whoa, this is Sam Cooke in a different way, you know. But it was, now, did all those singers you mentioned, did they all begin primarily in church and gospel and then gone out of that?
Oh, yes, the ones that I mentioned a few moments ago, not all of them. Now, I used to drive the legendary Otis Redding around. He didn't, I don't know whether he started out in church or not, but I know Aretha Franklin, you know, Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke is Sam Cooke. His lyrics are different, you know.
Right, but same sound, if you like.
Same sound.
The musicians then you played, you mentioned the way to get your music played was just to be on radio. And that was a whole different time, wasn't it? When radio was a whole different era, that it was such a big thing. That when I was a kid and you were a kid, like everybody listened to radio.
Yeah, one of the things that killed, I feel, radio was when 12 in a row, Blaine, you know, when they took all of the personality out of it.
Right.
Casey Kasem, Wolfman Jack. I grew up, the only place that you could hear black gospel and rhythm and blues in the smaller markets especially was WLAC in Nashville, Tennessee. John R., Horseman Allen, and all those guys. And ironically, 99% of the audience out there thought those guys were black. This is white as you are, brother. But John R. was my idol. He talked with so much soul, but that's who I wanted to be like. I never had a John R. voice, but you know, he was my idol. And before he passed, I had a chance to talk to him and speak to him on the phone. And I said, man, I just want you to know you were always my idol.
Well, it's funny you said it, because I was telling you off the air that, you know, I grew up in the New York area, New Jersey area, and all the personalities, they all had, you know, Cousin Brucey and you name it, their personalities. And I had the pleasure, same thing, to meet Cousin Brucey, hosted him one day. It was such a thrill because he was almost bigger than life, you know. But the amazing thing, Sam, I think you probably know this, he's still doing a show. He's in his 80s.
Wow.
He's on syndicated radio doing an oldie show. Isn't that something?
How about that? I heard Wolfman Jack, who's been dead for, they're syndicating him now.
The old Wolfman Jack.
The old Wolfman Jack.
Oh,
As long as you got the curves, baby, I got the angles. Wolfman Jack.
but isn't it cool that they each had their unique personalities?
Yes, yes.
And you mentioned something very interesting. You said 12 in a row killed some radio, but it's a shame because I really like the personalities. You know, you like listening to them, and then you were talking too. It was very exciting to sometimes meet them, or you go to a show and they did the show.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, yes. And to get a chance, you know, even in Albuquerque, I interviewed the legendary Neil Diamond. I brought Three Dog Night on stage at the Coliseum out there one night. And, you know, just people tell me that I should write a book with the people that I have learned and met over the years. And
No, I've told you that also. You know, you have so many great stories, and I'd love you to, you know, write it, but just start with a chapter. Just start with a story, you know.
Yes.
Then we'll build from there too. And did you collect the stories, or you just have them in your mind?
I right now I'm starting to jot some of the information down, but I have much of it just in my mind. And you know, before I you know, go on to heaven, I'd like to you know, just get it down, because for example, philosophies that I have learned over the years. I think I mentioned to you some time ago, James Brown. He is the one. We wound up actually getting the license to build our own radio station, which certainly was a dream come true, here in a little town called Blowing Rock, North Carolina, which is next door to Boone, North Carolina. We actually got the license to start that. But, you know, James Brown is, even though I sort of, you know, I thought about it over the years, but he's the one that inspired me to go into ownership. And I'm going to say this, and I guess, you know, the statute of limitation will protect me. But I don't know if our audience out there, do you know what payola is?
Well, I do. Some folks probably don't know.
Yeah. Well, what it is, imagine this. I'm the little disc jockey on the air, and you are a recording artist. So you come in my studio, I'm on the air, and back during the days, it was illegal, but it's really illegal now. You come in the studio and say, look here, brother, I got a hot project here. You know, smoke it for me and maybe slide $100 under the table. Well, I didn't really care whether it sounded good or not. If I couldn't handle it, you know, I'd turn the monitor off while it's still on the air. But the reason payola is so illegal, Blaine, is because music is like food. It's psychological. How many times did you hear a song today, you hated it, 3 weeks later, you were going down to the record store, or today going online purchasing it? Well, the James Brown and the Otis Reddings of the world could afford to pay the jocks off to play their product. But the little person couldn't afford that. So it was very unfair and very illegal. But like I say, the statute of limitations has protected me, and that was what happened back during those years.
Well, it also protected James Brown, who's no longer around. So
yes, that was.
In trouble. Well, let me ask you this, Sam: was it possible for a performer to get play without paying for it? You know, did some get through it?
There was all, you know, disc jockeys, I hate to admit it, but especially back during those years, was sort of lazy. We would look at the label first of all, and of course, if it was Michael Jackson, you know, he would always, James Brown, many of those artists, but not everybody obviously paid. You know what I'm saying? But we would look at labels a lot of times.
Talk about something else, Sam, you've gotten involved in, which tremendously impressed me the first time you told me about it. But you're also big in terms of working with kids. You know, you always want to give back to the community. Talk about some of the things you do in terms of working with the kids. Okay, one of the exciting things we do is produce a show, a kid show. It's not really a kid show, Blaine. It's called the Young World Radio Show. It's an adult show. You know, we play everything from Temptation to Willie Nelson and all in between, depending upon the market. But the exciting thing is that our local community youth, we made little rock and roll disc jockeys out of them. You know, everybody can't be a football player or a basketball player
or star in the band. But by the time these little kids are on the radio, say on the weekend on the local station, they're not only a celebrity on campus, but they are all over the area. And it's the greatest thing in the world for their self-esteem. And many of them, we work very close with the superintendents and the principals and all. And sometime I'll go into a school and the principal will say, well, Sam, those two little kids over there, they're real shy, or they may have a problem, as far as discipline is concerned. And these young folks are going to get some attention, even if it's negative attention. But once he or she becomes a local celebrity, now they've got a good reputation and a good name that they have to maintain. And it really works. But the main thing is I'm surprised at the number of students who become interested in broadcasting.
Well, one of the things, Sam, I think is also interesting, that being on the air, I guess, can help kids too, in terms of not only their self-confidence, but even if they have speech problems or they stutter or something like that.
Yes.
You probably know of this. There's some people that can just transcend whatever their problems were once they're in front of a mic. Have you seen that?
Oh, yes. And, when we sit down and we do a lot of coaching, and I work 10 times harder producing the kids show than I do Gospel Gems. I can almost wing Gospel Gems. But the first thing I'll tell the young folks, I want everybody in this room to look at me. And I demonstrate everything you say it with a smile, because it has a tendency to radiate. So I make them get the energy up. They declare that I'm a tough old man, but and they're under a lot of stress until all of a sudden it clicks and they get so excited. And when they get a chance to hear themselves and all of their peers hear them, man, that's cool. How did you swing that?
But I love that bit of advice, and it's so on target. Just the smile, even when you're gonna make a phone call. Just smile at somebody as opposed to being grumpy in a grumpy mood. And that segues, Sam, into another thing that I find amazing about you, but in getting to know you on the phone, at least, I was kind of blown away by the fact that you've had more than 1 or 2 jobs in your life, and not only more than 1 or 2 jobs, but even careers. And so you were just talking, you threw it out that you speak to school superintendent. You've also worked in colleges, right?
Oh, yes. I was an administrator in the community college here in North Carolina for 16 and a half years, used to be the dean of continuing education, and, several other, director of college and community relations and all. But, I had been in education 16 and a half years.
Did you enjoy that?
Yes, I enjoyed it. I've had I haven't job hopped that much. I've just had a lot of different interests. For example, like aviation. I have an extensive background in aviation. I'm a licensed commercial pilot with an instrument multi-engine rating. And I was a flight instructor there for a few years. So here again, going back to, education in a sense.
But I think that's your book, Sam, just in terms of each of these many careers or many jobs you've had, they're all fascinating. And you probably have, all sorts of stories about each one, Let's ask you another question too, though. And again, I think I've seen it in your career, but what's next for Sam Tate? In other words, do you have any other goals you want to do in your next life or your next career?
Yes. Well, like I say, I'm born in 1945. I'm 76 years old and time is winding down. But right now, my mom left me 47 acres of property on a river, not too far from Boone, where we live now. You step out in the backyard, you're in Mount Pisgah National Forest. So to answer your question, we want to build a retreat where people can just get away, walk through the woods and along the river banks and branch banks and all, and just meditate, spend time with God. But it's got, in addition to the faith side of the project, Blaine, we want to do some things for the youth. Of course, we want to teach them radio broadcasting. We want, as a former flight instructor, I want to teach these young folks how to fly, or at least get instructors to teach them how to fly. My motto when I was doing a lot of flying is, when I'm not on the air, I'm in the air, you know. But these things can keep young folks from having to try to be like somebody else. You know, one of the great things about this microphone that helped me even when I left the farm and went off to college, I didn't have to try to keep up with the big football players with all the muscles and everything. You know, I was that little old cat on the radio, man. I was old Sam the Shad, Sam the Ripper, the lady's personal honey dripper. Thank you, Lord, for saving my soul.
Well, I'm listening, by the way. I love it. So it seems you have about like 47 nicknames, you know, that whatever you're in the mood for, you give yourself a name. I like that.
Yeah, you know, and the amazing thing, as you know, Blaine, we all have problems, but so does that audience out there, and they don't want to have to know about your problems. So when you pull that mic switch, it's almost like a split personality. You know, in other words, I'm another character besides Sam Tate. But, you know, the interesting thing, even though, you know, I was blessed with, I guess what I don't like to think of it as a talent, but a skill in radio, I never tried to live up to the image of Sam the Shad. You know, it was just a job that I loved doing. And that's why I enjoy doing the gospel show so much.
What are some of the gospel singers that inspire you, or some of your favorites?
Okay, of course, Sam Cooke. I was a Sam Cooke fanatic, still am. The Five Blind Boys of Alabama, the Jackson Southerners, Joe Ligon and the Mighty Clouds of Joy. All of those artists I knew personally. And on my radio show, I have interviews and promos and all with them, you know.
Because one of the things I miss, I think I told you about this, is that you can't even get CDs anymore. You know, I don't know about you. But,
yeah.
Well, let's talk about even stuff you collected going back when I was a kid. Probably you were even before that, but 45s. Remember they used to have something called 45 records?
Yes.
What was before 45 records?
The 33 and a third, big RPMs, you know, 33 and a third.
So 45 was a revolution at the time, right? When it first came out?
At the time, yes.
But what's amazing, Sam, trace the history of it then. So we went from 45s to what?
From 45s to, well, actually, the 33 and a third.
Okay.
You know, the vinyl, which is, by the way, Blaine, is coming back.
I hear. Do you still have vinyl records?
I still have some, but most of my library is on CD. From 45s, it went to the CDs.
No. Before that, was it cassettes?
Yeah, a lot of it was on cassette, but most of the music that we actually played on the was 33 and a third, and then the 45s, you know.
Because what's upsetting to me, I may have told you this, Sam, is that I used to have a car. I drive and listen to music, and I had all my cassettes. So I had to get a car that had a cassette player, you know, and a radio. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, what's really upsetting, so you mentioned CDs, and where there was 8-track tapes also, right?
8 tracks, before the CDs. That's what we played a lot of our commercials on. Yeah, that was actually really 4-track, but 8 tracks cassettes, you know.
Right. So then they had 8 tracks, and then like you said, and that lasted a fairly long time. Then it went into CDs, right, for the most part. Mm-hmm. But what's really upsetting to me, Sam, now is I love CDs, I still do, but you can't. The cars don't offer CD players anymore. You can't hardly buy them anymore. They're becoming a thing of the past.
Let me tell you, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was talking to a gentleman here recently about that. You know, many of the artists out there on the road, when they do these, for example, gospel or secular shows and all, they have a table back there in the back where they sell their product.
Right.
And people, everybody, you know, doesn't have, and most everybody has CD players in the car, but now they can't sell the product to people who own the newer cars.
Right. Yeah, because I think I told you I bought a car that had a cassette player and a CD player, but now because I had to have the cassette player, and now you can't buy a car anymore. Newer cars, they don't even have CD players anymore. Yeah. You know? So it's changed, but that's a really good point you made, that for a performer, it's not such a good thing.
No, that's how they make their extra revenue. You know what I mean? Yes.
So they have to, I guess, get it on Spotify or someplace on the internet, you know.
But the older listener and all, they're about like me. They don't understand all that stuff. They're going to have CDs. And what about, does that mean that people who have been collecting CDs over the years now have to do away with it? Maybe enough people will get together and, just go to the car producers, and just say, hey, put both ways in there,
Or Sam, maybe you'll see what you were saying that's happening with vinyl, that I know my nephew now has, record player and he plays only vinyl,
Yeah.
So vinyl, right, is sort of making a comeback.
It's making a comeback. They say it's got a better quality, a richer tone and all,
Right,
than the CDs.
and I guess you would know more than I. Do you notice the difference?
No, I know nothing about engineering hardly.
No, but I'm saying listening. Can you tell the difference?
Not really.
Okay, no, me either.
Yeah,
I just like listening to the music. So Sam,
Yeah.
let's go back to the show then. So you're doing these two shows. If people want to listen to them or find out, well, first of all, listen to them. How do they find the two shows you have being syndicated?
Okay, Gospel Gems, of course, on the 70, 75 radio stations that we're on, many of them stream their broadcast day, through the internet and all. But for Gospel Gems, just go to Gospel Gems Network. That's GEMS, like rubies and diamonds. Gospel Gems Network, and scroll down to the bottom of our web page, and we've got about 8 or 10 different shows there. Now, the Young World Radio Show, we haven't been producing that for about a year and a half because of COVID. We haven't had access to kids, haven't had any school. It's just now getting started back. So
back to the show you mentioned. That's how often do you do that show?
I do. It's a new show once a week. It's an hour weekly. It's a weekly oldie goldie black gospel radio show that has a different show every week.
Okay, and where do you do those shows?
I have my own studio. I'm sort of sitting in the studio
Is that
right.
where you are now?
Yeah.
And so that must be a labor of love. Do you enjoy putting on the show each week?
I enjoy it. It's the only thing I've ever done where I may get tired physically, but not mentally, if you know what I mean. I really enjoy playing gospel gems, where playing the gospel is what I do, and I like my job.
Okay, and to compliment you, you do it very well.
Well, thank you so much.
Sam Tate, I'd like to thank you for being my guest this second half hour on the Blaine's World Show. I knew we'd finally get to meet, and sooner or later we're going to meet in person. I'm telling you, my friend.
Look forward to it.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
I'd like to thank also my guest the first half hour, Darko Butorac, for being my guest on Blaine's World Show, as well as to Amy Prisnash, my producer. I look forward to having you join me next Wednesday at 9 a.m. here on WPVM 103.7 Asheville, North Carolina. You can also listen online at WPVMFM.org and watch on WPVM's Facebook page. And I thank you all for listening, and I hope to actually see you with no COVID in person, even shake your hand, Sam, and actually meet you in person. Thanks again. Real pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, let me see if I can stop the recording.